So, I think it's fair to say things have gotten pretty wild recently.
Drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, full of, people that basically are anything
What's wrong
other
with that,
than
Sarah?
white.
What's wrong with that?
Violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die.
Well, I don't like black people.
Nor do I. Nor do I.
So we're on the same page.
We didn't start this and we didn't want it. At the hands of the liberal elite, the invaders decided they wanted more than just a piece of the action. They decided they wanted all of it. So it is decreed. The fight for Britain is on.
You say migrants in hotels should be deported. Where should they be deported to if their country isn't safe or if another country won't accept them?
I'm sorry, I've had enough of this. If you come from Afghanistan, you go back to Afghanistan. End of. This.
Kill them on the beach. I am out. There's enough. Come here. Your race is confirmed.
In this video, we'll be getting into the question, do Muslims have a future in the UK? And try to figure out what exactly is going on. A simple look around and you can clearly see in Europe and the West in general that far-right movements are not just some fringe weirdos anymore, they've become mainstream. Not too long ago, parties and politicians who used to be seen as nutjobs and extremists, they're now at the forefront of shaping national conversations.
What is happening in Europe, and this is happening for the first time, where far-right and populist parties are clearly and simultaneously leading the polls in Germany, France and Britain, that are Europe's three largest economies.
Just to be clear, these people and ideas have always existed. It's just that they were probably too afraid to utter it in public. They'd whisper it in pubs or at family gatherings instead. Now, well, those same ideas are chanted at demonstrations, they're shouted from political podiums, and they're celebrated in party manifestos. The Financial Times recently described this as the mainstreaming of far-right politics across Europe, noting that figures once deemed unelectable now sit in government coalitions. So what exactly is the far right? The Rand Center of Excellence defines it with some or all of the following characteristics: nationalism, racism, xenophobia, call for a strong state, and anti-democratic attitudes. And I'd add, always with a truckload of nostalgia for some imagined past where things, were just great.
I'm here to protest, right? Because I'm going on a march because I want Britain to be back British.
At its core lies this fantasy, and it is a fantasy of protecting a so-called pure identity from supposed outsiders, aka foreigners and immigrants. And while the scapegoats have changed over time, the structure of the story remains the same. So what does the X-Men have to do with the far right? To explain that, we'll need to explore the idea of shapeshifting. Think of Mystique from the X-Men. She's the blue-skinned mutant who can become anyone she wants. Her gift is survival, which she does through adaptation. You see, she doesn't need to defeat her enemies by strength or numbers, but by mastering her environment, blending in until she's unrecognizable. One moment she's a soldier, the next a politician. Her true form is rarely seen because survival depends on illusion. And this exact same principle operates in society and in politics. Old fears appear under new guises. Prejudice is a shapeshifter. It doesn't vanish, it just reappears, transformed, modernized, and even respectable. The far right's chosen target is never fixed. It evolves and changes with the anxieties of the day. To prove this point, let's have a walkthrough of our glorious history to spot the patterns. It wasn't a very long time ago where Jews were seen as outsiders. They were accused of conspiracy, infiltration, and having a dual loyalty. And as they fled persecution from Nazi Germany, some of the same papers that now support Israel were panicking about Jews arriving in the UK. The Daily Mail dramatically headlined with "German Jews pouring into this country." The British Union of Fascists distributed flyers urging "Keep out alien Jews." And supporting them was Viscount Rothermere of the Daily Mail with a headline of "Hurrah for the black shirts," a shorthand given to the British Union of Fascists, as they would often wear military-style black shirts, which was modelled on Mussolini's fascist movement. By the way, the guy who ran that headline supporting fascists, Lord Rothermere, well, that same family still owns the Daily Mail via DMGT, and today this group is Britain's most widely read publication with roughly 10 million daily readers. So yeah, there's that. Different decades, updated targets, same business model. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Irish Catholics were smeared as a lesser race. The newspapers would describe the areas they lived in as rookery districts, basically a slum. These rookery districts were described as the haunt of poverty and disease, dirt and crime. To discover one worse is impossible. The West London Observer called Irish residents the terror of the neighbourhood. And Punch, a weekly satire magazine, they would caricature the Irish as ape-like. Then came the Windrush generation.
Sees the arrival of more than 400 happy Jamaicans. They've come to seek work in Britain and are ready and willing to do any kind of job that will help the motherland along the road to prosperity.
Who would see decades of racism, hostility from the press, the National Front, and even politicians all queuing up to fan the flames of racism. Famously, in one election campaign in Smethwick, it was deemed acceptable to lead with this as a campaign slogan. The notorious Enoch Powell, an elected MP, gave this type of racism credibility, stating in Parliament no less, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. Interesting choice of words, right? Perhaps it was guilt about this. Maybe he was worried about retribution. We also had the Eastern European interlude. After the EU enlarged in 2004, and especially when work restrictions on Romanians and Bulgarians were lifted in 2014, the media reverted to the exact same metaphors. The Sun warned of a tidal wave of Romanian and Bulgarian immigrants threatening to swamp Britain and flood our overstretched job markets. Even the broadsheets joined in. Britain is powerless to stop tens of thousands of Bulgarians and Romanians moving to the UK. The Daily Mail further amplified the panic with claims that all the flights, coaches, trains had all sold out, as pretty much the whole of Romania was rushing to gain entry to the land of milk and honey. Of course, as you would expect, once the doors had opened, the feared flood never actually materialized. Same language, swamp, flood, tidal wave, hordes, just different passport colours. Fast forward and the nouns change again. This time it is the Muslims. The Sun led with 1 in 5 British Muslims sympathy for jihadis, a complete distortion of the survey and widely discredited. We also hear so much about so-called non-Muslim no-go zones or areas ruled by Sharia. Article after article, talking head after talking head, and just so many YouTube videos recording the exact same stretch of road in Whitechapel. The mosque, the market, the curry houses. Oh, look how brown this place is, and oh, look how many Muslims are here. This place is clearly ruled by Sharon law, right? Of course, our very own Enoch Powell has led the crusade.
We have a growing number of young people in this country who do not subscribe to British values, in fact, loathe much of what we stand for. So what do you do?
Who are we talking about there?
Oh, I think we see them on the streets of London every Saturday.
What do they look like? Oh, we're talking about...
What do they look like?
Are we talking about Muslims here?
We are.
Only to be outdone by Robert Jenrick, MP and Shadow Secretary.
I thought it was quite wrong that somebody could shout
What about the
Allah
last 8
Akbar
or 9 days?
on the streets of London and not be immediately arrested or project genocidal chants onto Big Ben?
The language has barely changed, only the nouns. Yesterday's Jew is today's Muslim. The charges: failure to integrate, divided loyalties, and being a threat to British values. So, will Muslims ever be accepted in Britain? Possibly, but only if we abandon what makes us who we are. History shows how the bargain works. Jewish communities eventually found social acceptance, but the cost was secularization, i.e., in your private lives, do as you please, but once you close your front door, your allegiance is to king and country. Irish Catholics blended in, each generation less distinctive than the last. Even the descendants of the Windrush generation, they're now British in a cultural sense, their Caribbean roots confined to food, music, and carnival. Tolerance arrived once the differences became decorative. You're alright, mate, you're one of us, you're not like them. For Muslims, that's a trade-off we're very unlikely to make. For us, Islam is not a weekend accessory, it's a way of life. So where does that leave us? To understand that, we will need to make a slight detour to understand a political idea that underpins much of what we are seeing. The Overton Window is the polite political term for how the unsayable becomes policy. Named after Joseph Overton, a policy analyst at the Mackinac Centre for Public Policy, it describes the narrow band of ideas considered acceptable in public discourse at any given moment in time. Everything outside that band is extreme until slowly and deliberately, well, it isn't anymore. So how does it work? The Overton window can expand or contract, meaning that ideas once considered extreme can become mainstream, while previously accepted ideas can fall out of favour. For example, think of issues like same-sex marriage or marijuana legalisation. Both have gone from being fringe topics to widely accepted policies. Politicians often operate within the confines of the Overton window, advocating for policies that align with public opinion. They are more likely to support ideas that fall within this window to maintain their political viability. First, someone on the fringe says something outrageous. It sparks outrage, dominates the news cycles, and suddenly the idea itself is being debated. Not accepted, just debated. But that's the trick. Once an idea enters debate, it's halfway to legitimacy. A few decades ago, suggesting the UK leave the EU was political suicide. Then came UKIP, then came Nigel Farage, then came Brexit. The same playbook, the exact same playbook, is now being run with Muslims, immigration, and identity. Each gaffe, each controversial comment, it's not a slip, it's a test balloon. When Boris Johnson compared niqab-wearing women to letterboxes and bank robbers, it was dismissed as clumsy humour.
Would use the terms bank robber and letterbox to describe Muslim women who wear a burqa.
Well, people, Philip, dig out all sorts of
quotations. You said it.
All sorts of articles.
You said it.
And
what do you say to that?
What I can certainly say, if I do not ever set out in any of the
Would you like to
thousands of articles, what I will say is, and I've already said sorry for any offence that I've caused, and I say it again, but let me be very clear that I don't set out to cause offence in what I've written.
In the immediate aftermath, reported anti-Muslim incidents spiked. The message was very, very clear. Ridicule Muslims, win column inches, and face absolutely no consequences, and shift the line of what can be said a little further right. And this is exactly how the window moves, gradually and imperceptibly. Soon, ideas once too toxic for polite conversation, ideas such as banning Muslim migration or questioning halal food, or even claiming there are Sharia no-go areas, these were then being discussed on primetime television. Poll after poll showing people genuinely believe there are areas of the UK governed by Sharia where non-Muslims cannot enter. Once upon a time, that was a crazy conspiracy theory. Now, it's a concern ministers promised to look into. And this is the crux of the matter. The far right shapeshifts, and to do that, they thrive on linguistic camouflage. Send them back becomes stop the boats. Muslims are incompatible becomes they don't share British values. White Britain becomes British culture. The content doesn't change, only the marketing. What was unspeakable last year becomes a legitimate question this year and policy the next. The far right doesn't even need to win power. It only needs to shape the debate. Once it dictates what can be said, It dictates what can be done. What started with a song, then moved into protest and culminated in political policy. And yet again, the Overton window creeps more and more towards the right.
'Cause here we're getting everything and we're getting it for free. Oh, I've got a brand new leather jacket and a brand new mobile phone. Brits, they live in cardboard boxes while we get furnished homes. Legal aid driving lessons, central heating and free pills. Oh, we get all the benefits and you get all the bills.
The obsession with illegal immigration and stopping the boats really is a masterclass in political distraction. Do you actually believe it was ever really about the boats? No, it was always about normalizing intolerance in small doses. First, it was about stopping illegal migration or stopping the boats. Then the discussion moved on to legal migration being too high. Next up, maybe we should look into indefinite leave to remain.
Nigel Farage says Reform UK would abolish indefinite leave to remain, which allows people to apply for permanent residency in the UK after 5 years. Those who already have settled status would have to reapply for a new stricter visa, which requires a higher salary threshold and better standard of English. He says it's intended to reverse the huge rise in legal migration under Boris Johnson, which he has dubbed the Boris wave.
And whilst we're at it, what about British-born children? None of the above? Okay, no problem. Let's quickly check the melanin levels, just to be sure.
If you could get rid of every black person in this country, what would you do? Good, well done. And if you saw someone of colour here right now, what would you say to him?
Start small, sound reasonable, expand the goalposts. And this is the point. Stopping the boats was always the decoy. You know, the irony is not lost on me that Britain actually needs immigrants. You know, after Brexit, we had a national campaign called Pick for Britain, which was launched, with the sole aim of getting Brits to fill harvest jobs. The type of job that isn't particularly glamorous, but is absolutely essential if we would like to eat. We even had a royal decree urging Britons to get out and help the national effort.
If we are to harvest British fruit and vegetables this year, we need an army of people to help. Food does not happen by magic. It all begins with our remarkable farmers and growers. If the last few weeks have proved anything, it is that food is precious and valued, and it cannot be taken for granted. This is why that great movement of the Second World War, the Land Army, is being rediscovered in the newly created Pick for Britain campaign.
And yeah, you guessed it, it collapsed. The island that once prided itself on global reach can now barely pick its own strawberries. So, as the Overton window shifts, we are now firmly in the crosshairs. We have been othered. The numbers tell the story. A Guardian report found that 35% of Britons believe Islam is a threat to the British way of life, and 49% of 2017 Conservative voters saw Islam as incompatible with British values. A 2022 survey found that 23.2% of middle-class British respondents held biased views about Islam. To make it clear, that's nearly a quarter of this subset of the British public. And that was 3 years ago. Can you even imagine what that number has risen to now? In 2024 government figures, 38% of all religious hate crimes targeted Muslims. A separate study found that 64% of the British public named Islam as the most negative religion. At this point, many Muslims are seriously weighing up their options. In autumn 2024, a Tell Mama survey reported that 1 in 3 British Muslims said the far-right riots had made them consider leaving the UK for another country. The same piece of research also found that 2/3 believed the risk of harm to Muslim communities had increased since late July 2024. And anecdotally, I agree. The WhatsApp chats and the Muslim dinner table conversations all hum with a quiet question: what is our plan B? Even Baroness Saida Vasi has written explicitly about Muslims being pushed to think in terms of having a plan B, i.e. having an exit strategy, prompted due to the increased hostility towards Muslims. For a quick pulse check, type Hijra UK into YouTube. You'll find pages and pages of vlogs and how-to guides, British families narrating moves to the Gulf or North Africa, and step-by-step playbooks for relocating. It's not scientific, I know, but it does give an indication of the mood music in the UK amongst British Muslims. And usually, by the time the data is caught up, it's probably too late.